Okay, this is the second session of the seminar. In the first session, we had very interesting and informative papers, 3 of them, representing the mortgage lending in the US, the financial literacy and financial well-being and its relationship to the choice of insurance product. And then the credit card and debit card fraud and the role of financial literacy. So in the panel discussion, we have 5 discussants, and I will be chairing the session. Again, my name is Mancho, and I'm serving as a chairperson of IAFICO, organizer of this online seminar. Why don't I quickly go through the 5 panel discussants in the order, in the alphabetical order of their last name. We have Professor Chol Choi at Sungmyeong University in Korea. You can wave. Okay. We have Muhammad Mamun from University of Dhaka in Bangladesh.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
But you cannot see me because my video is something wrong. But you can hear me, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm
Can
sorry
you hear
to hear
me?
that, but welcome. Yeah,
Okay.
We have Professor Satoshi Nakaide from Waseda University in Japan. Hi, Satoshi. Yeah. Then we have Professor Jungkook Son from Gangwon University in Korea. Okay. Last but not least, we have Professor Dintitan Ban. We go with Professor Ban from Vietnam National University in Vietnam. Okay, so we have 5 panel discussants, and I tried to put a little bit of structure in our panel discussion, such that in the first round, I like to go around the 5 discussants with 5 to 7 minutes per person about any comments you have on those papers, plus if there is any, what implication some of those findings presented to your own country. Okay, then in the second round, I have a little more specific topics that I want to consult with individual panelists. So in the first round, why don't I start with Satoshi, actually. I think you have to unmute. Please unmute.
Yeah, we cannot hear you, sir. We cannot hear you, Professor.
Can you hear
okay,
me?
I can hear you, yeah. Okay.
And can you, can I share my slides? Or
Sure,
this?
yeah. You can do the share screen from your end.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I'm trying. Oh, this
Okay.
is thank you very much for the wonderful webinar. Keynote speeches and presentations are very interesting and stimulating. And I'd like to make some comments on the 3 papers. But as you know, I'm not the expert on financial education itself. I'm rather the expert in insurance. But I put what I found in this interesting presentation. And as to the Professor Martin's theory, he shows the importance of mortgage choice, and it was very interesting to know the relationship to other things. But most of the interesting things I particular is the kind of mortgage products And because I would like to show the situation in Japan. And he pointed out the interest-only mortgage and analyzed this products mainly. But this product is not sold in Japan. And it's a very highly risky mortgage, I understand. It is used for business purpose only. So normally, the consumers use the other type of mortgage. So situation may be different from USA, and such kind of interest-only mortgage gives more freedom and more chance for making increase of asset. But of course, it brings much risk. And the mortgage, household mortgage in Japan may be classified into 3 types as to the interest rate. One is a fixed rate. This means the amount of return every year is the same. And the second is a variable rate, but within certain limit. In case of the much fluctuation, variable rate should be controlled within certain limit, but still it is a variable rate. So the amount can be changeable in the long way. And the third one is the mixture of 2, the fixed for certain period of time and then variable. And as to the fixed rate, consumers understand the loan itself, but as to the variable rate products, there is a risk. And consumers do not know exactly the risk itself. And also consumers need to decide which type of interest rate they choose. So there is some risk, and explanation is very important. So now FSA, the financial services agencies, made ordinances which requires the seller to explain such kind of interest rate system and its risk itself. And also banking societies make much higher regulations to explain and confirm their intent. So what I want to comment on this point is that generally it's very important to have the knowledge of mortgage. And from this way, education helps consumers to understand loan product itself, but this is very limited. And I think it is more important on the regulations for the sellers of selling mortgages to restrict selling risky products because consumers are not well prepared. And also secondly, to require seller to explain risk and also all the sanctions and damages for the breaches. I think that for mortgages, I found something like this. And as to the second presentation of credit card, it's very interesting and enlightening. And also the market survey of students is so interesting for me too. And derived conclusions sound convincing. And I'd like to comment some situation in Japan and maybe in Italy, there should be some statistics showing the types of people who are the victims of credit card. And professor's approach was analyzing student, then comes to the fraud. But I think so one approach can be the analysis of the statistics of fraud. And if we found what kind of age people are vulnerable or occupation or situation, then we can make a more concrete education for them. And also the tricks of credit card fraud known to the victims, I think it's very important. If the general education is important, but for the prevention of fraud, the general tricks of what kind of internet transaction is risky, such kind of information is very important. And to prevent or such kind of fraud, such information may be important. And there's education of specific knowledge of fraud to the likely victims help to minimize victims. I think to some extent, if we have some specific knowledge, we can cope with the risk. But the wrongdoers are going ahead. They are creating more and more sophisticated means. So we have to be very careful on this. And as to the situation in Japan, very low penetration of credit card because many people are very cautious about it, especially for older people. And most credit card provides some insurance for fraud or some security. So in Japan, the most serious risk is not the credit card fraud, but the overborrow by using credit card. This is particularly heavy in the young people. So financial education may help young people to for such kind of risk to some extent. And on the other hand, older people do not use credit card so much, but they are the target of It's Me scam. This we call it ore sagi in Japan. They are some people telephoning all the people and they took some cash. And we are trying to prevent it. And we are making education, but it is so difficult. So we have so much, we need to do more and more for this. Sorry for spending precious time. I will quickly making comments. And as to the Professor Soyang Park's interesting research, I found that Professor is analyzing life insurance, but I think there are various life insurance products, and some are more on risk or financial risk of loss of life, and some are more on building asset. And as to the situation in Japan, high penetration rate already in life insurance, more than 90%. And this does not mean that people understand life insurance. So life insurance is a combination of death payment and also payment at the fixed age. In this, this means the saving type products. So people are more driven by the attitude of sellers. And also there is the effect of tax treatment. And many lawsuits are made after the sales of variable life insurance because people do not understand such kind of effect. And there was so many lawsuits in Japan. But so far, if the life insurance product is more on saving, risk can be lower. But anyway, it's very important to make it a duty to explain. Of course, education is important for to understand life insurance generally, but such kind of duty will be important. And as to the comments, and I think the motives to buy insurance and also the demerits of life insurance can vary according to the type of life insurance. So generally, education is important to understand the life insurance, but when people come to the life insurance agent or the people, it's very important to impose some duty and regulation on the sellers to do good conduct. So that's all my comments, but I think education is important, but of course, regulation is important. So combination is always important. And thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you, Satoshi. Then from Japan, why don't you go to Vietnam? And let's hear from Professor Ben about the papers and implication to your country.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And you can unshare. You can unshare the screen, Satoshi.
Oh, okay.
Can I share my screen now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear my? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah.
You can expand.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I think I have some comments on 3 presentations, and I will go follow with the one that I received, the presentations. First, the presentation from Dr. Gianni Nicolini. I think it is very interesting topic, and it should be studied in the context of further study in the context of increasing cyber risks nowadays. And however, I think there's something in the paper that I'm afraid that we need to make it more clear. For example, the level of financial literacy of students is different, normally higher than other groups. So that's why it's not surprising that the result show that the financial literacy do not affect the identifying the fraud at all. And I think that one shot or seminar education only provided knowledge, not practice. So that leads to the behavior change. And that's why I think that he did not find any difference between the group the control group and the treated group about the level of fraud acknowledgement. So in this paper, I think that he's mainly tests the acknowledgement of frauds rather than the ability to avoid frauds in the future. Because if the type of the answer is only no fraud, you think this one is fraud or no fraud, or having the risk of fraud, for identifying the frauds seem not really reflecting if a person can avoid the actual fraud in the future. Because in the real life, it's more complicated to identify the fraud. And even with us, we have financial education quite formally, but we still have sometimes we still feel that it's not easy to identify fraud right away. So I think that he should have other kind of questions. For example, some question that have some case study or some situation that student can actually act in that situation. So that's about Dr. Gianni Nicolini presentation. About Dr. Martin C. I think that mortgage holdings is a complex decision. It's not only based on the finance. It might be because of the difference in culture, and even the perception of household house ownership is various among cultures. It's changing in generations nowadays in debt holding and even spending. For example, in Vietnam, nowadays the younger generation, they seem spend more and is willing to stay in a rented house rather than having or owning the actual house. So so that's why I think the mortgage holding is not really it is quite complicated decision for the general public based on the culture. And also in the paper, he measured the financial literacy of the mortgage holders. He distinguished between two groups, illiterate and literate household. So I don't know if someone who buy the interest-only mortgage is literate or not literate or illiterate household. I don't know if we can separate like that. And also it's quite difficult to define which is the good mortgage decisions, because it's really based on the personal circumstance. And also that I think one of the limitations for the research is that the sample is based on only the interest-only mortgage holders. So the future research may focus on the other mortgage type holders as well. So that's my comments for Dr. Martin C. Presentation. For Dr. So-Young Park and Dr. Donjon Lee, I think that in hypothesis, you speak about the demand for insurance, but actually your research collecting the data from the actual purchasing insurance of the population in the US. So that's why I think it should not be the demand, because the demand should be broader than the actual purchasing. And also, I think when you have the dependent variable as financial well-being, I guess we have to think that the financial well-being definition based on other things as well. For example, if they have investments or properties, they may not have insurance, but they still have financial well-being, for example. So I think maybe you should have the more correct, having insurance as the dependent variable instead of saying it's a financial well-being. And also, I think when somebody buy insurance plans, they have different purpose. They may have the protection purpose or investment purpose or long-term plans for their kids in the future. So maybe in the future research, you should focus on the type of insurance plans, because it will reflect the purpose of the holders. And I think this is very important topic to research in Vietnam as well. Because in Vietnam right now, we have 66 insurance companies, and premium is still very low, only 4.66 billion US dollars. And it raised the need of researching about the determinants, how people buy insurance in Vietnam. So basically, that's my comments on 3 presentations. I'm afraid that the authors are not here, so they cannot answer my questions or my concerns, but that's just for us to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. You're right in that the authors are not here with us, all 3 of them. We had videos for Martin and Gianni, and then Sojong has had the excuse because she had another meeting to go. But I will ask them to view the videos that we are creating. We are recording now, so they will have a chance to get your comments, and then possibly you can have some interaction. So at this point, why don't we go to Professor Mamun in Bangladesh.
Thank you very much, Professor Mancho. Professor Ding, will you please take out your slides, please?
Yes, I am doing it now.
Unshare screen. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, thank you. So basically, I'll not share any slide. My views, especially Bangladesh, and some of the comments regarding the presenters. So let me start this way. The topic of today's seminar: financial education in era of digital transformation. Okay, let me start with Professor Han Zhu. When his case is, if not exactly like Bangladesh, quite close, but Bangladesh is even worse. And this COVID-19 has shown us how weak we are in digitalization. Even policy of our government is digital Bangladesh. They're doing a lot of things, but it has shown how especially the educational sector. For example, in Bangladesh, there are over 100 private universities and about 50 public universities. And due to this COVID virus problem, the government has locked down our institutes, starting with the primary to the tertiary level, for about 3 months. and still is continuing. Unfortunately, excepting few private universities, out of 100, probably 15 or 20, they started online education. Public university, not at all, none of them. That shows that our weakness structurally, with the power, with internet, and of course economic, but to me economic condition is not that important. The support of infrastructure and internet is very, very weak. That means there is a mismatch between industry, educational institute, and our stakeholders. So even we say digital transformation, at least Bangladesh could not cope up with the scenario, or we haven't changed much. Our learning still bookish, nothing wrong in that. Theory-based, well, that's what we also promote. We support theory, but less need-based. I mean, that's another, we'll come to that, industry and education. So regarding education and digital transformation, Bangladesh, probably South Asia, India also, we are not ready at all. Okay. Now, let me take case by case, Dr. Park, regarding insurance. I don't know, in Bangladesh, due to some social stigma, this particular industry hasn't developed at all. But one of her comments really, I mean, it's a question to her also, because her study area and Bangladesh will be different. What she said, she found literacy and life insurance. She found a positive correlation. But unfortunately in Bangladesh, you will not find even 1% of the educated working who are capable of life insurance. They have no policy. But this is very interesting, no policy. And there is, it's true, probably it will take a little time, but there is a big market for life insurance in Bangladesh. Our banking sector is quite strong, but insurance is not much. There's some social stigma. She also mentioned of religion. Majority of Bangladesh, we are Muslim. So that can be one reason, but educated people are not coping up with this. Okay, that's a little unfortunate. So there are a lot of studies done. Okay. Now let me take to Professor Nicolai, University of Rome. This one, card problem or banking industry. As already I said, our banking industry is quite strong. Now, the problem with them, they try to digitize. I have research on that. Most of the bankers say that mindset, even of the bankers who are highly educated, not yet ready for digitalization. Okay, low investment is another problem they found in this digitalization. So this low investment is resulting into security and these card problems, fraud, forgery, and all. Okay, so these two, low investment and security, as well as awareness, both from the bankers as well as the customers. Customers, to my understanding, well, yeah, they're less aware about this digitalization problem. But bankers, they are trying a lot, but to them, too quickly, they have been entered into this digitalization with much study on what will happen to the human resources. Once they go for digitalization, the manpower need will be about 1/3 or even more or less. So what they will do with them? So they haven't done much study on that. So for them, it's a little hasty and quick decision. And their mindset, not yet ready. In other words, the professional attitude is missing. Our customers are varied, especially banking, insurance. Some of them are highly educated, very few of course, middle educated, less educated businessmen. So we cannot blame, they say, the customers because their awareness level assumed to be less. That's what they expect. But the bankers are not doing properly. And a lot of card fraud cases are there. Security problems, hacking is happening in the banking sector especially, and they are very worried about that. Then Professor CA of USA, very interestingly, he said, literacy and knowledge. I mean, he found probably, he questioned that. Literacy and knowledge, are they highly correlated? Probably no. Because, as I said, in banking, most of our bankers are highly educated, but at knowledge level, probably this will not help. And already I said, our education system is theory-based, very bookish. So there is a big gap between the industry need and the theory that we are teaching. So probably they will be needing more training, to attend more workshops, more seminar to update with the latest digital phenomena. And the US case is different. South Asia cannot be compared with US case. Our culture is different. In case of Bangladesh, we were unfortunately getting very, very industrialized at a GDP growth rate of 8%. Poverty level is reducing, but this COVID-19 has totally, changed the whole scenario. Still, we don't know how we'll recover from this. Government is trying, liberalizing a lot of things, opening up. So spread of Korea somehow, I know, they handled, we could not handle it yet. So all this, but COVID make us smart, we have to say. Especially private university, that quickly they entered into this online education. In other words, young lecturers, even the senior professors, they have to cope for their survival with the Zoom, Google Meet, all this. So it is something like the situation forced the private universities to go for more digital transformation, adapt with that. Public university, okay, they are dependent on public, they are sure about their salary and all, so they don't worry much, and they are lagging behind. So overall, I'm trying to link the different presentation and case of Bangladesh mainly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we are back to Korea, and we have two discussants. I don't have a particular order between the two discussants, but based on the name, alphabetically, if I may, why don't you go to Professor Choi, Choi.
That's okay. Thank you. Just a moment, please, as I will share my slide. Okay. Can you see the slide?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So we could have a good lessons from the presentations today. So I think all the speakers. First, Professor Kood so gave a brief but informative introduction to the financial education in the U.S. So personally, I like the U.S. system. My first impression is that the United States has a good system for the nationwide financial education. Relatively appropriate education content and resources are provided for the generations in different life cycle stages. It's okay. This is the causal relationship among financial education, financial literacy, and financial well-being. So financial education enhances financial literacy, and in turn, it give rise to financial well-being. Okay, but these expectations as we have is the research agendas of so many researchers in this field. Today, the following presentations is by Professor Nicolini and Professor Park and Professor Say. And those presentations were about the relationship between financial education and financial literacy, and especially the professors say is referred to the relationship between financial literacy and financial well-being. It's okay. As I think that the most important thing is that how to define those terms, so particularly financial literacy and financial well-being. Okay, so people also have different definitions about those terms. So some empirical studies is maybe different. So because they have different definitions and different approaches, so the result is also maybe is quite different so from each other. So I'd like to make comments on the difficulties of assessing financial literacy and financial well-being. Can you see this? So there are two ways. So usually there are two ways of assessing the effect of financial education. Two different approaches. So approach one is assessing the same person or the same group of homogeneous people as before and after financial education. And so the other approach is assessing two different groups, so treatment group and control groups, so with or without financial education. So for the first approach, so let A be the initial level of financial literacy, so measured before taking financial education. Okay, so as A becomes A prime as after taking financial education. Okay, A prime is the changed level of financial literacy, so financial capabilities measured after taking financial education. So in this approach, so we can see the difference between A and A prime. Okay, that is the goal of this approach. But there are some difficulties in this approach. So number one is financial the only influential factor here? So maybe some other influential factors may intervene. Okay, so for this particular study, empirical study, So we need to consider these difficulties so very carefully. So the first question is that, and the second question is about time. So time really matters. Okay, so how long, also so how much time does it take for financial education to make some so positive or expected effect? Okay, so it may take long, so or but how much time? Okay, so we assess the financial education level, so before and after financial education, but how much time should we wait? So when to assess is an important issue to be discussed before evaluation. As many empirical studies should consider these problems. In the second approach, treatment and control, as A prime is the changed level of financial literacy is after taking financial education, and B is the control group, the level of financial literacy without taking financial education. So now we compare these two groups as A and B. But in this approach, so we still have some difficulties. So number one is are A and B is homogeneous? That is, so B should have the same level of financial education initially. Okay, is accepting this, the problems becomes the first approach. A becomes a prime. Okay, it's now in this approach, approach 2. So B is initially the same as A. Okay, so we can compare as A prime and B. This comparison is the same that between A and A prime. Okay, so the empirical study should be designed as considering these difficulties and these relationships, and number 2, time still matters, because A prime is the changed level of financial literacy after financial education. So how long does it take for financial education to make some effects? So there are 2 approaches like this, and the other thing is the definitions of the keywords, financial literacy and financial well-being. In the previous presentation of mine, I quoted this as OECD. OECD is a definition of financial literacy. Financial literacy is a combination of awareness, knowledge, skill, attitude, and behavior. So awareness and knowledge are so mostly the same. So there are typically 4 aspects of financial literacy. Number 1 is knowledge, so awareness and knowledge, and number 2 is skills, and number 3 is attitudes, and number 4 is behavior. So so these 4 components of financial literacy are important, and so we need to measure all the is a component of financial literacy. To see the causal, to demonstrate the causal relationship among financial education, financial literacy, and financial well-being. And so we should correctly define financial literacy and financial well-being, and then so we should measure those four aspects of financial literacy in an appropriate manner. That is important, I think. And the last thing is about how to assess. So there are four different aspects of financial literacy, but as for me, I'd like to put some more weight on behavior and application. So because as even if some people are well educated or have higher level of financial literacy, they may fail to make a desirable decision in the actual decision-making situation. So even in Korea, as I heard the report, even lawyers may be victims of financial fraud. So financial literacy, so here the fundamental question arises. Financial literacy, is financial literacy is effective, and is financial literacy is really important in reality. As that question arises, so because we see so many situations in reality, is many people and well-educated people so fail to make desirable financial decisions. So the behavioral aspect is more important, I think. So in assessing financial literacy, the behavior and application and those aspects should be well measured and assessed. And that is important, I think. So okay, that's it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you. And finally, we have Professor Son, Jung-Guk Son from Gangwon University.
Yeah.
Do you have a slide to share?
Yeah, just one slide.
Yeah,
Sorry.
then
Yeah.
push the share screen.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, first of all, it's my great honor to join in this prestigious seminar as a panel.
Could you speak up a little bit? Yeah.
작은 거. Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
It's my great honor to join in this prestigious seminar as a panel, and I am very sorry for not preparing PowerPoint file. I'll make it right away and post on the homepage of IAFICO after this seminar. And I would like to excuse me to give general comment regarding the effectiveness of financial or investor education briefly. Not today's presentation specifically. As you can see, this is the section of my comment, but the comment is very briefly and not takes long. The first section, the difficulties of measuring the effectiveness of financial or investor education. As Professor Say told me, measuring the effectiveness of investor or financial education is not easy, is no easy thing. So many factors are involved in it. In general, it is measured after a seminar regarding financial literacy. The problem of measurement of that kind is that the participants entering such a seminar tend to already have an interest in financial products. More importantly, how long the effectiveness will remain cannot be measured despite being the core of the education. The purpose of investor financial education is not just to check the effectiveness of the education right after being educated, but for the participants to apply the information or knowledge when they have to make financial decisions later appropriately. The second section, experiment for Wharton School students. In 2006, an experiment regarding selecting index funds was conducted for MBA students in the Wharton School. In summary, they were not good in selecting index funds smartly. Students in one of the best MBA schools in the world. I did not. I am not sure how long it will take to educate personal investors till they will be superior to the Wharton School students. The third section, the intervention of the salespersons. Furthermore, the intervention by the salespersons have to be considered. The effectiveness of that kind of intervention is still more clear than that of an investor or financial education. I am sure maybe the subject of marketing cannot exist if the effectiveness has not been clear. In the experiment mentioned, the students chose index funds with the level of fees smartly first, but the more materials for marketing were provided to them, they were distracted from what they had to focus on. The context of a seminar and of a practical financial transaction cannot be same. Section 4, choosing things is actually similar. Actually, financial issues seem to be not unique compared to the other decisions we have to make in daily lives. We choose a non-financial product without fully knowing about it. For example, we do not buy some bread after checking the ingredients fully. We do not buy a fridge after checking it thoroughly. Even purchasing a car is not much different. Similarly, financial consumers tend to choose financial products without enough considering. Section 5, using experts. When we confront a case, it is more efficient to commit it to a lawyer than to try to deal with it by ourselves. When you get ill, it is much better to trust a doctor than to gather relevant information through internet. Likewise, consumers do not need to be a financial expert to choose a proper financial product for themselves. Paying financial experts who will select a financial product on behalf of them would be the smartest way in light of time, cost, etc. It can be the smartest way for themselves as well as the society they live in. All of the members of a society cannot and need not to be a lawyer or a doctor. A society cannot continue if it is consisted with only doctors or lawyers. I'm not sure why all the members of a society need to be a financial experts. Section 6, financial experts that can be trusted. Financial experts will matter if they have interest not aligning with that of the consumers, but if their interest aligns with that of the consumers, they can be trusted. Not their personalities, but if they have interest to put the benefit of the consumers first, they can be trusted. And the independent financial advisor has such an interest. Section 7. Effective Section 7, effective aim of the financial or investor education first. We need to establish an effective aim of the financial or investor education first, an aim we can reach. An education for making consumers financial experts are really useful both to consumers and the society. Section 8, financial or investor education need to be effective. On education to put consumers on an efficient path if needed essentially. Is needed essentially. That education will be to teach consumers the smart way to deal with the financial matters, to provide intuitive financial knowledge and information, such as the relationship between the expected return and the risk, the importance of diversified investment, and how to find a good IFA for themselves, etc. Any very specific and intuitive warning and information against any specific financial fraud, as Professor Nicolini presented, can be included. Any very narrow and specific simulation of choosing and purchasing any specific financial product, as Professor Zhang presented, can be included. It's my conclusion. Just-in-time education is the best. I fully agree with Professor Kud in that just-in-time education is the best. I assume that it can serve almost everything. Perhaps just-in-time education can be considered as a long-term solution, as it will be possible when we all can use the more intensive and smaller sized mobile computer equipped with higher performance AI controlling big data. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have first round of comments by all five discussants. And then what I intend to do next is to throw a couple of topics to everyone, but it's not for everyone's discussion. You know, if you want to make additional comment on any of those topics, please do so. Then I do want to have some general Q&A. I see from the screen that we still have senior members of IAFICO online, Hongju, as well as Professor Jung Hae-yoon, Hong-Moo Lee. So I just want to have them a chance to contribute to the panel discussion. So please don't go away and wait a little more. So my first topic is more a micro issue. I think, you know, the one theme that we are hearing repeatedly today from keynote speeches, presentations, and panel discussion is the difficulty in designing a right or effective financial education program. So if I go a little deeper dimension, then let's say we have three main components of such thing, you know, that we don't know, that there is a effective financial education program. The first one seems to be obviously content, what we are going to teach. The second element may be the pedagogy, how we teach a particular content. But there may be a third component, which is related to the topic of today's seminar. That is sort of a platform or delivery method. You know, it can be a face-to-face lecture, or it can be through a platform, either internet or mobile platform-based the delivery. So among those, I'm sure there are other important elements, but let's say we define some key elements in the microstructure of working financial education program. Which one do you think is more important than others, and why? That's the question that I want to throw. So I don't want to designate anyone initially. So if any of you have a chance, I see the Satoshi raise your hand. So why don't you go first?
Thank you. Before making comments on this question, can I ask one thing? One, I think one also important element is to whom education is necessary.
Client. Yeah, okay.
So education can be very wide. School education or education for the adults and education for the elder people. And I think the content can be different. And
Right.
content can be different on the situation.
Yeah.
So what are you arguing? Are you making education in general, is general financial education, or specific topic for specific sales or something like that? So when we discuss education, we have to define what kind of education and for what purpose and to whom. So for schools, we can give some general education of the contents of financial products. And for university students, maybe higher. But for the adults doing some business and so on, education should be more specific for more specific purpose. And in such a case, we have to narrow the target and then think about the contents and how and delivery and so. So this is sorry speaking first because I wanted to make some question to Professor Mancho on this one.
Okay, so that point is well taken. So let's say we have 4 instead of 3 key elements that we can consider. So as you open up that issue, could you just go ahead and continue to make your statement as to which one do you think should be regarded as should have a higher weight compared to other elements?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think this depends on the purpose of the education and targets of the education. And there shouldn't be any priority because objective is different. For the younger people, they are going to the society and they will be have some risk of financial products and credit card and also many buying and so on. So for them, they have some content so on the general things. But for the adults who are making some mortgages, they have to learn about mortgage. And when they are buying some stocks, they need to have some education on how, what is the risk of the stocks and so on. So the priority is, I think the most important things when we discuss is the purpose of the education. Why we must do education. So what's the purpose of education? Then we will think about the contents and how we teach and delivery and so on.
Okay, thank you. Now, let me go to Professor Song. Your last point was the importance of just on-time education, as Professor Cute stated in her keynote speech, which I concur totally. Then, given the importance of just on time or contextual education that can meet a particular need of a certain the students or client, which delivery, what would be the effective delivery of this just on time education? Or do you think other elements that Satoshi and myself discuss should get more attention?
Actually, I think the just-in-time education is not education. It need to be categorized in advisory, not education. So I'm sure that advisory is useful to ordinary investors than education. So I fully agree with Mr. Professor Kud that the just-in-time education is the best. And as I commented, the first thing we have to implement a financial education plan, we just reach a consensus regarding the aim of the education. If if the aim of the education is to make investors to select by themselves to financial product, I'm sure it cannot be reached. It cannot be possible aim. But if we just want to make the investors after education to be select a good financial expert for themselves, or we just educate them intuitive and very essential financial basic, such as the importance of diversified investment, or the relationship between expected return and risk. It can be reached easily, and I'm sure the result of that kind of education is more satisfactory. So
your point is instead of putting a lot of information on the financial consumers themselves, we can educate those people who can provide the effective financial advice to consumers.
Yeah.
So you think that would be a better way
yes, you are right, and as well as the way to select the proper IFA for themselves, we need to educate.
IFA means independent financial advisor.
Yeah,
okay.
And we need to educate personal investors the basic financial principles, especially the relationship between expected return and risk, and diversified investments.
Okay, any other person? Ben, you raise your hand.
Yeah.
Professor Mancho, can I make a little comment?
Yes, but after Ben. Ben, oh, I'm sorry, I cannot see you, but you know, the Ben wants to make some comments. So please be brief, and then we can go to MZ, Professor Mamu.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that we need to distinguish between financial literacy and financial competencies, because financial literacy means the very basic and fundamental knowledge in finance. But when you are talking about finance competencies, maybe you are talking about a higher level of financial knowledge and skill and behaviors. So for different target groups or for different organization, we can focus on competencies or on literacy only. That's one point. The other point is that some people think that if you are just throwing the knowledge to general learners, they cannot digest at the same time. So we need to have the practice for them and guide them through a period of time, so you can see the behavior change or the decision making process. That's why some people they prefer, and because of different type of learners, we can have different effective learning tools. For example, some people want to learn about the rule of 72. It's easy to learn, right? But if you teach them about the interest rate, about the component of interest, it's more complicated. They cannot remember. So that's why we need to, I agree that we need to see type of learners to fit with their learning style, especially for young generations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. MD?
Okay, thank you very much. First, let me comment on Professor Satoshi. Generalizing education, even at basic level, is so difficult because cultures are different. I mean, different culture, different education, different types. So it's very difficult. Even then, let's see ultimately what matters. Finance is a part of life. Consumer, yeah, well, we cannot leave. Money comes in real life. But even if we take case of Bangladesh, say we, in primary level, we have divided our education into 3 groups: science, arts, and commerce, from the very beginning. So the science students have no idea about this, even the basic finance or economics, no idea about that. But in American system, I have seen these basic things, they start from the basic level. So pedagogy and content, these are very important, even if they're different. But I think even a country like Bangladesh, where we have stigma regarding insurance, but unless we start from the very beginning, that insurance, the positive things, negative things, everything, then ultimately it will not work. And one thing is becoming, as I said, we are becoming smart. This digitalization, any education, finance or whatever, now digitalization is become, I mean, it's almost a must. And for that, support structure, that also comes in automatically. So whether you have the proper support for digitalization, like power, internet availability, how cheaper, how government, so all these, there's no one answer. But to me, at the very primary level, some sort of finance education should be in their curriculum. Because ultimately this is true. This is what matters. Life, finance goes together, hand in hand. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Now, unless there is Professor Choi, you want to say something? Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yes, so I'd like to make some comments on the previous issues. It's about education and advice. In my opinion, so advice so really complements education. But they should go together. As a complement to each other. In some cases, so people may have an appropriate level of financial education or financial literacy. In that situation, some experts may help them to make undesirable financial decisions. In that case, advice maybe is important, and maybe it's meaningful. And another thing is this. In designing financial education and making financial education contents, there are so many different needs of financial educations according to their life cycle stages. So for example, young children have little chance to make financial decisions in their daily life. But adults may face many financial problems in their living. In the early stage, a desirable habit formation education is important. So for example, attitude toward money and spending money efficiently and saving, and those as contents and those education those education topics are important in all these stages. So for the young people, even young people like university students have a real chance to make such complex financial decisions. So because they do not make money, because they are university students. In that stage, some level of financial knowledge. So for example, interest in the time value of money, interest rate calculation, and diversification in investment, and those knowledge components may be important in this stage. So there lies as a basic, as a horizon, according to people's life cycle stages. It's over the horizons. So we need to design a proper education, financial education contents. That is important. And then finally, education is important. And so on the other hand, as advice, so for example, the help of independent financial advisor will be important. As I already mentioned, so it's about the cases, especially for vulnerable people, so with the low income, so with the low level of financial literacy, so with the low level of credit scores, and those vulnerable people may need the help of those experts in finance, and advice and education should go together. So that is my opinion.
Okay, I think that last statement is a good segue to our second topic, that is role of government, what government can and should do. And financial advisor is one good example. You know, as Professor Choi already mentioned, the government may focus on the vulnerable groups in terms of providing counseling and advice. Also, advice may not be free. You know, that there may be a cost dimension, and whether or not financial consumers can afford or are willing to make such, you know, the expenditure. That can be another issue. So, but generally, you know, given our discussions today, what do you think the government, you know, in our panel, we are representing basically Asian countries. So in this part of the world, what do you think the government can do to start creating this effective financial education system? So that's the kind of last topic that I want to throw to all five discussants. And as before, I don't want to designate anyone initially. So if you want to share your thought, please go ahead. Ben?
Yes, I can share some approach from Vietnam. Actually, in Vietnam, our Prime Minister just approved the finance inclusion strategies for the nationwide last January. And in the strategies, we have the financial education strategies. So in the strategies, the government would like to have all the parties in the economy will participate in financial education. For example, Ministry of Education and Training will have some subjects that embed in some subject in K-12, financial education embedded in K-12 subjects, because we don't want to have our separate subject first. We want to embed it in math, in moral education, in project-based activities. Then I think gradually, after several years, we will have our own financial education subjects for K-12 students. That's the first one. The second one is that other organizations such as banks and State Bank of Vietnam and all commercial banks or other credit institutions will have some education for their customers. And even at our university, we have personal finance as a subject. And I think that in the future, we should have some more financial education majors it's like a formal CFP programs in Vietnam. So hopefully with that approach, we will have higher financial literacy level in Vietnam. So that's from our perspective. And actually, we hope that we can invite experts from other countries to share the experience on conducting financial education in the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. With that statement, I just like to announce that we are planning to have IAFICO on-site seminar in Vietnam, sponsored by Vietnam National University and the State Bank of Vietnam in late January. So I will announce more details later on, but I just want to make a note, you know, related to what Ben mentioned. And then if I may share what's going on in Korea in terms of government role in this area. In fact, Korean Congress passed the Financial Consumer Act of 2020 in March this year. And it took about 9 years for them to pass this law. So that shows there are a lot of involved parties with different interests. And then they emphasize the role of financial education. And then they are going to provide some control tower. the law will be in effective 1 year later, so next year. But they seem to be some centralized authority in mind to have quality control and set some policies for the financial education. So that's one note that I like to make. And then I sort of reopen the question to everyone, if you want to share your country's experience. Satoshi, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate highly the Korean attitude to make a new law. We are far behind, so there is no movement to make such kind of comprehensive law for the financial consumers. And as to the education, this is my personal view, but I think education is very important, and especially education is important for young people to increase the interest of financial products and finance, because many people are reluctant and are afraid of it. But investment and finance is also, and insurance, these are very important. So from the young days, the government should put this subject into the compulsory subject and increase the not only knowledge, but the interest of finance and these matters. And then we have to think about the education for the older student as well. But unfortunately in Japan, the number of professors and number of courses for insurance is decreasing. So insurance is also the part of finance or finance and financial products, and very important. But the situation is such kind of way. I think that we have to, government should think about the importance of education for finance as well. And also, I think the government should publish the many examples of frauds, financial frauds, and so, and also platform to show such kind of materials for education. To some extent, FSA, financial education agencies are doing, but I think that they need to do more to give the knowledge and examples for. But in the days of new technologies, wrongdoers are making more and more knowledge and making technical frauds. So government needs to study such kind of AI technology and prevent financial frauds using such kind of AI technologies. And these are also important. And of course, the government should regulate the financial market and sales because education is not perfect. So government should do the restriction and regulation to supplement the education. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. I think we have about 10 minutes to go from our target finishing time. And then, it's me. And we still have one of our keynote speakers, Hongju, with us. So I wonder if you have anything to add, Hongju? Maybe he left. Oh, we have Hongju back. Could you unmute your speaker?
Okay, I enjoyed the nice discussion over the financial education, including the Professor Choi's the nice structuring of the education, literacy, and the financial well-being. Yeah. And as he said, the financial education is kind of like an input, and the literacy is kind of output. So we need to design optimal input and output level anyway. But I guess in order to maximize the total output or minimize input, so we need to design, first of all, the optimal level of output allocation, so knowledge allocation among the customer group and the financial institution and the salesperson. So that the allocation of the output should be designed by law or regulation. So as like the recent FCP law in Korea, there are some duty to explain something to customer, and customer has the right to be informed. So in that case, customers has a less burden to know something. But the optimal design should be beginning from the law. So we need to have very nice law first, which is the allocation or division of the knowledge required for each group or each sector of the stakeholder. And then we need to think about how to educate the people to have that knowledge. And also we have a new technology, digital transformation to rely on, like an advisor, electronic advisor. So we can consider various options to maximize our return or production, the education or the info. That's my whole idea.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go to another person who is actually the expert in financial education, Professor Jung-Hae Yoon. She has been with us from the beginning. So I think it would be useful if we can hear any comment or view you may have. Professor Yoon, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we got it.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Today's topic focused on education, and there are 3 layers. At first, protection, and second, education, and the third, information, which consumer can trust. And Dr. Son introduced a new idea, just-in-time advisor. Is the 3-layer is for collective level, I think, and just-in-time advising or counseling is needed for especially for the vulnerable consumers. And I think it's very helpful for the before processes. Yeah, Professor Jung recommended is input. Input is maximum or optimum. Output to be we can produce efficient. I think Dr. Son's advisory counseling is very useful thing, but the cost would be a problem issue. Yeah, that's one thing. And the other thing about the research side, in the United States, they have a bureau, Consumer and Financial Protection Bureau, has producing like Dr. Park, Sojong Park use that data. I'm very envy this situation. So why the developed country like United States have founded that such kind of bureau is the bureau's name is Consumer and Financial Protection Bureau after global financial crisis. And the thing is, financial products is very complicated. Even if I'm do not challenge risk about the finance. My motto is only saving. I think that's the wise strategy, because it's very risky and in some kind, and if I do investment, I couldn't do research. So but in Korea we have enact the financial consumer protection law. We could have such research data to do today's Dr. C did, and Dr. Park did. That's my short comments.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now,
I will give you one final chance to the discussion, but before I do that, is there any question or comment from others who are still online?
Can I have a question? A very quick question.
To Professor Yoon?
No, actually to Korean college, because I saw on the news that recently the youth Koreans have a lot of trouble in having a lot of debt and going to be bankrupt in the future. The news said that. So I'm not sure about that. So just want to ask, is that true that younger generation in Korea, they depend a lot on credit cards?
Credit cards?
I saw the news about Korean youth, so that's why I just want to ask the situation in Korea. Is that
okay, so I will ask anyone who is willing to answer that question. But before do that, is there any question or comment from others online? I can see Professor Sung-Suk Kim is still online. Yu Kyung-ho. So any sort of departing question or comment? Maybe not. Then going back to Ben's question, is it that you're asking if the young people in Korea are overusing credit cards? Or is it sort of a big company related leverage issue?
이런 게 있는데 카톡으로 많이들 하더라고요. 그래서
Okay, I think we can go back to Ben's question when we meet in person in Hanoi later next year in late January. Is there any other panel members who wanna make a final thought or remark? Yeah, Professor Choi.
Okay. It's about the government's role in initiating and designing the financial education in a country. I think the government role is very important. The first reason is that financial education has mm, financial education has these characteristics as a merit good and a public good. So it is a very good. So that is the government expects or hopes that the people may have some level of financial literacy. In that sense, so due to the characteristics as a very good and a public good, and the government role is important. And the second reason is that it comes from Professor Sojong Park's presentation today. Her empirical study says that there's a positive relationship between financial literacy and holding insurance. So that means so people with higher level of financial literacy so might have those people so with a higher level of literacy usually hold insurance policies. In some sense, so that means some people so without without a desired level of financial literacy, so don't have so insurance. But as I think those people so may need insurance. Okay, so how can I say? I'm sorry. So what I mean is as this. So people who really need insurance so may not have a desirable level of financial literacy. It's according to the empirical study is of Professor Park. They don't have insurance, even if they really need insurance, and they have a low level of financial literacy, and they don't have insurance, so they are exposed to the various risks in the future. That's a problem, really problem. So in that case, the government's role. So we can so think about the government's role, as in the case, the governments provide financial education. So freely to those people who are advised, so provide so advising service so to those people, then they will have some more opportunities to hold insurance. I'm sorry, but as that is my closing as a remark. Thank you.
Great. I think the today's seminar is not the only seminar that IAFICO will organize this year. In fact, we will have an annual meeting in August, August 7th. That's a date that we are targeting. So we can continue our discussion and collaboration. So I really appreciate everyone to participate for a long time. Before we close, I want to briefly make 2 points, which I think are related to the discussion today. The first one is about AI and some, the digital data and technology. In my school, KDI school, one of my colleagues are using the AI-driven robots to teach statistics. I don't want to reveal name because I don't want to give a free advertisement for them. But it really hits in a positive sense among students. Obviously, his teaching evaluation skyrocketed. But the main thing for this robot is sequencing. It has individual students, it profiles each student, and then based on the need for each student, it goes through a sequence of statistics topic so that the students can have a more, customized and tailor-made statistics education. I think the financial education will have to go to that direction in the long run. The question is, how good robots can we make to supplement other types of financial education that we can provide? That's my first point. The second point is about data. Professor Yoon and others already made this point. But I think, as an academic association, our primary activity is research. So without data, we cannot go that far if it is an empirical research. So from the presentation by Nicolini, Professor Nicolini, if we can have global data, maybe a country panel of certain type, as to the frequency and category of financial frauds that are happening in different countries. I'm making an example, but that can be if some reputable international agencies like OECD, World Bank, if they put together such credible data, then I think that will be a great service to the research community in the world who are interested in this topic. So that's my final remarks. And again, I appreciate everyone, and I hope you have an enjoyable weekend, and I will see you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.